Hello students, welcome to Learning Plan 5. We only have 2 learning plans left in our class and they are each a week long, and I will put out an announcement about that to orient you and provide you a roadmap for the last part of our class here. Learning Plan 5. Organizational control and the management of police productivity are 2 of the most critical activities undertaken by administrators and supervisors. They are also 2 of the most complex and abstract administrative functions. This learning plan explores the executive's role, the process of control, the potential dysfunctional consequences of excessive or inadequate control, and how productivity may be managed. These functions are central to police administration because they conceptually equate to how the police interact with the public. Competency is to create a plan to develop, implement, and monitor a new program. Learning objectives. A, outline how successful plans can benefit future innovation. B, select a program monitoring method. C, incorporate alternative scenarios into a criminal justice plan. It's met in the discussion boards, but primarily it is met in the assignment. The assignment, assuming you are a police chief, list and discuss what techniques and strategies you would use to improve productivity and then to maintain it at a high level. And it's open, it's broad, and your approach and how you choose to approach it. I like that for this assignment because many of you have current or former law enforcement experience, and these papers tend to move towards that, meaning that those of you that have current or previous law enforcement experience tend to reflect upon what a situation that occurred or the productivity of your overall department or agency,
I'm glad to be
and then
working
analyze
with you
that
again for seminar number 2.
Assignment purposes.
And the topic of our second seminar is the strategic marketing planning process.
5.1. Think about what is necessary for an infrastructure which promotes efficient accomplishment of goals and objectives while maintaining effective control. 5.2. Why is the concept of management by exception so critical to administrative control in a police department? 5.3. What are the sources of the various standards and expectations used for control purposes in police departments, and why are they important? 5.4. Define productivity as it relates to policing. Now, a side note for our discussion boards here, because Learning Plan 5 and Learning Plan 6 are only a week long each. Your initial post is due basically at the close of Learning Plan 5. I cannot impose a Thursday or Friday deadline for the initial post because that would not be fair, considering that all of the previous learning plans, it was due at the end of the first week of the learning plan. Now, with that in mind, to earn full credit, you have to reply to 4 other students on 4 different days during this one 7-day week. However, many of you, not many of you, some of you do not provide your initial post until Friday or Saturday. If you provide it Saturday, and that's when you access the class for the first time for discussion, you've only given yourself 3 days to reply. If there were other posts Friday, Thursday, and Wednesday, and you didn't access the class until Saturday, yes, you will lose credit, you will lose points for not replying over 4 days. However, if the first initial post that is provided is, say, this Saturday, and there were only 3 days in which to reply, I am not going to deduct points because that's not fair. I encourage all of you to get your initial posts in as early as possible or posted so we could have dialogue, but that's the way Learning Plan 5 and Learning Plan 6, my modified rules for the discussion boards, are going to work. Office hours, again, through Adobe Connect, Tuesday tonight at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time by appointment. You are not required to attend. It is always easier to call my office phone, but those invitations will go out here shortly. Okay, so the following slides are fully cut and paste from the source that's below, and this is one of your readings under learning activities for Learning Plan 5, and I simply cut and paste it and put this reference information up front because I didn't want to. The hard thing, and you all know this, about using certain types of sources is that you can only paraphrase it or reword the original writing so much before its original intent is lost. So because we're discussing, or this article discusses ethical leadership, and I'll go into it more, there's a research design as well and results. I'm not going to attempt to paraphrase. I'm just going to cut and paste because I don't think I can reword it and keep the same intent behind it. What's integrity? Okay, if you've been in the military, they push integrity big. Overall, integrity is choosing the hard right over the easy wrong, or doing the right thing when nobody is looking. That is integrity. Integrity is vital to the functioning of private as well as public organizations. If the integrity of an employee or manager is in question, it may have paralyzing consequences for them as well as the organization. In order to improve or safeguard the integrity of their organization, many boards have developed all sorts of policies ranging from codes of conduct and whistleblowing procedures to job rotation and screening procedures for applicants. Yet, of all the measures that can be taken to prevent integrity violations, the behavior of management remains the most important. Several scholars, as well as practitioners, argue that leadership is the key variable influencing the ethics and integrity of employees. Any of you who've been in leadership positions, I think, or you've been in the military or law enforcement, and you have a leader above you, leadership truly does set the tone for everything. Of course, people are going to do things, the human factor is always going to control in the very end. However, the leader has so much more influence than he or she perceives or believes they do, and that cannot be stated enough. Corruption is often defined as behavior which deviates from the formal duties of a public role because of private, regarding personal, close, family, private clique, pecuniary or status gains, or violates rules against the exercise of certain types of private regarding influence. A broader definition views corruption as synonymous with all types of violations of moral norms and values. So corruption is more of the moral and normative value standard than it is the actual taking of something. So, for example, if I say that Goldman Sachs is a corrupt bank because they fraudulently sold low-grade mortgage-backed securities to Greece, Ireland, and Norway, knowing that they were going to collapse in 2008 because the mortgage holders would not be able to pay their mortgage, right? And that's what happened. Okay, it's, if you study the economic collapse of 2008 and the too big to fail banks. But I say they're corrupt because they violated the social norm and expectation of fair dealing by a business. Okay, so they intentionally defrauded foreign investors through the sale of low-grade mortgage-backed securities. We define integrity as the quality of acting in accordance with relevant moral values, norms, and rules accepted by society. Ethics can be defined as the collection of values and norms, functioning as standards or yardsticks for assessing the integrity of individual conduct. The moral nature of these values and norms refers to what is judged as right, just, or good conduct. You can read this as I'm talking here. Values, norms, ethics, all of those are subject to time, manner, and place regulations. So what we consider ethical and moral now might not have been considered ethical and moral 30 years ago. I'll give you an example. Doctors it was common practice and accepted that doctors would tell women they could have up to 10 cigarettes a day if they were pregnant, and this was till about the mid to late 1970s. Now, if you hear of a woman who is smoking while she's pregnant or you see it, there is a huge stigma against it. I remember growing up and going to restaurants and having to pick smoking or non-smoking, and that was the norm. And now people, because we've banned smoking from, pretty much every state's banned smoking inside in some way or another, smokers have been made to feel as if they are immoral people for their choices. It used to be, even in the 60s, if you went into somebody's house that didn't smoke and you lit up a cigarette and they got mad at you, they were the one who was wrong. Like, what's wrong with you? It's just a cigarette. So norms change during the times. And so we tend to think that what we do now and the way we think now is the correct answer, but it's just correct for this very moment in time, not forever in time. And that's why people seek religion and spirituality, because they seek to find an invariable or a mandated code of ethics and beliefs that transcends time and culture and is applicable throughout all of history and in the future. So what this article sought to do is to identify the various types of police misconduct. They sent out thousands of surveys to various police agencies, and the surveys were fairly long and comprehensive. And the hypothesis, well, I'll go to the hypotheses in a second, but the concept was to have police officers privately, identify the level of police corruption and police misconduct at their level, and then identify how management styles such as openness, strictness, or role modeling affects the number of police misconduct violations and perception of corruption. To go further, the concept of the article, of the research, was to identify whether certain types of management styles led to more police misconduct, thwarted police misconduct, or led to less police conduct. So officers acting with integrity more because of a particular type of leadership style. The police misconduct identified in the survey was corruption, the abuse of office for private gain, fraud and theft of resources, conflicts of private and public interest as a result of giving or receiving gifts, conflicts of interest as a result of jobs and activities outside the organization, gratuitous violence against citizens and suspects or police brutality, other improper investigative methods of policing, abuse and manipulation of information, ill treatment such as discrimination and sexual harassment of colleagues or citizens, wastage and abuse of organizational resources, and misconduct while off duty. Those were the identified police misconduct actions that were in the survey. So a lot of there's relevant aspects of leadership that were identified in the research. They only explored 3. And the most often cited qualities of ethical leadership in relation to integrity violations of employees. They only explore 3 types of leadership because they had to narrow the focus down. Role modeling of managers through setting a good example for employees. That's the first one. Second one, strictness of managers in applying clear norms and sanctioning misbehavior of employees. And the last, openness of managers to discuss integrity problems and dilemmas. The manager is a role model. The example set by management is often cited as a determining factor in the behavior of employees in general, and more specifically, safeguarding the integrity of an organization. Subordinates are likely to imitate supervisors since these individuals represent significant others in the organizational lives of employees. The authors, their hypothesis is that the more managers display integrity in their own behavior, the fewer integrity violations will be committed by employees. That was their hypothesis, and then they evaluated the research. Strictness of manager, the second management style. Employees will refrain from committing ethical violations if they can expect that such behavior would be punished and that the level of punishment would outweigh any potential reward. Discipline for violators serves as an important symbolic role in organizations. It reinforces standards, upholds the value of conformity to shared norms, and maintains perception that the organization is a just place where wrongdoers are held accountable for their actions. Okay, so strictness can lead, the idea is that it becomes deterrence. Hypothesis 2, the more strictly managers enforce ethical norms and punish wrongdoers, the fewer integrity violations will be committed by the employees. That's the second hypothesis. Last, leadership style or management style. In an open organization, employees can be honest about mistakes, ask for advice when confronted with integrity-related issues, discuss integrity dilemmas, and report deviant behavior. In a closed organization, criticism is not tolerated, delivering bad news is not appreciated, employees are not called to account for their misbehavior, and employees are encouraged to keep their mouths shut, close their ears, and avert their eyes. Third hypothesis, the more open managers are in the sense of offering employees opportunities to discuss and address integrity issues, the fewer integrity violations will be committed by its employees. Let's see what the data has to say. Leadership was a key ethical cultural factor. It was one of the most important factors in the study. If employees perceive that supervisors and executives regularly pay attention to ethics, take ethics seriously, and care about ethics and values as much as the bottom line, then all the outcomes were significantly more positive. So what that means is the research showed that the police officers who identified that their police managers were ethical and promoted ethics also reported less corruption and less incidents of police misconduct. The importance of, this is the fourth hypothesis, the importance of leadership is undisputed, and setting a good example and openness seems to coincide more with values-based approach, while strictness is more consistent with a compliance-based approach with its rules and sanctions. So you can thus expect that leadership characterized by role modeling and openness will contribute more to curbing integrity violations than leadership characterized by strictness. This results in the fourth and final hypothesis of this study. Leadership characterized by role modeling and openness will contribute more to curbing integrity violations by employees than leadership characterized by strictness. And that's self-evident right there. The results. Role modeling has an effect on the frequency of all integrity violations listed. We find an especially strong relationship between a lack of exemplary behavior and favoritism within the organization, discrimination, sexual harassment, gossiping, bullying, and falsely reporting in sick. So if the manager is a good role model, then there are far fewer incidences of corruption, police misconduct, calling in sick, gossiping, bullying. So in essence, people follow their leader. Strictness has an effect on the frequency of 15 to the 20 integrity violations. A relatively strong relationship can be discerned between a lack of strictness in misusing work hours for private purposes, gossiping, falsely calling in sick, and carelessness in the use of organizational resources. Therefore, if management is strict in their upholding of the rules and employees know what's expected of them, and those that violate it are punished, and others know about that punishment, then it serves to deter that type of police misconduct, corruption, and other issues in the future. So basically, the more strict, the more adherence to the rules, the less violations. Openness, the third and last characteristic of leadership, is strongly related to the 15 types of integrity violations. A relatively strong relationship can be discerned between openness and internal favoritism and discriminatory remarks to citizens. So having a workplace that is open, or there's a door to knock on and discuss something that was seen or observed or read, knowing that it's going to be handled appropriately, reduces the incidence of internal favoritism and discriminatory remarks to citizens. All three aspects of leadership, role modeling, strictness, and openness, have a significant effect on the frequency with which corruption occurs. External corruption is influenced primarily by strictness. The aspect of leaders with the strongest impact on internal corruption in the workplace is role modeling. Openness also plays a role, whereas strictness appears to be less important. Again, it goes back to what many of you know already. This is just a scientific approach to it, or a statistical approach to it. Role modeling and being a leader with ethics and integrity is the strongest correlate to thwarting corruption. As in, if the leader has ethics and talks about it and promotes it, and everybody knows that leader has integrity, then it becomes infectious to subordinates, and there's less corruption because the people and individuals in the group don't want to stand out and be sanctioned in that way or be known as the corrupt one. Strict managers seem to be more successful in preventing the use of working hours as well as organizational resources for private purposes than managers who set a good example. While open managers do not seem to influence the misuse of working hours at all, they have some influence on the misuse of organizational resources. Frequency at which lost property is taken for private use is influenced by openness to some degree and to a lesser degree by role modeling and strictness. To the frequency of accepting gifts, strictness has the strongest impact. Again, that would be common sense, as in if a manager learns that a subordinate has accepted a gift they're not supposed to, and that subordinate is sanctioned for it and others know about it, then that serves as a deterrent for any future subordinates who might accept gifts. Skip down. Gratuitous use of violence or police brutality. With respect to the frequency and the use of police brutality by police officers, role modeling has a clear effect, openness has a more modest effect, and strictness has no effect. And strictness, it's different as far as investigating and prosecuting or sanctioning those that are guilty of police brutality. That's a different study. That's a different part of the study. What this is discussing is that a police officer who views his manager as having integrity and being ethical, and not only that, but role models restraint and proper use of force, that is what the police officer is going to follow. The use of improper methods of policing. Regarding the use of improper methods of policing, two leadership qualities influence both types of behavior included in the survey: role modeling and, to a lesser degree, openness. Again, role modeling seems to be the key. Discrimination and sexual harassment of colleagues and external parties can be restrained by role modeling and openness, less by strictness. Managers who set a good example are most likely to change improper conduct among employees, such as gossiping, bullying, discrimination, and sexual harassment. Strict and open leaders have relatively less influence, but openness has a greater impact than strictness. Of course, openness would, because if an employee is being bullied, sexually harassed, and there is a recourse for that employee to go discuss the issues that they're experiencing, then that's obviously going to be, it's going to have a greater impact than strictness. Because so consider you have a closed organization where you don't feel as if you can go talk to management or report you being sexually harassed. Well, if that's the case, then it's hard to enforce the rules under a strictness leadership style if nobody can report what's actually happening. So that's why openness has a greater impact. And of course, role modeling has the most impact. With regard to the extent of abuse of organizational resources, managers who are strict and set a good example can be successful. Openness has some effect on falsely calling in sick, but no impact on the careless use of resources. So role modeling and strictness, again. And that slide's irrelevant. Okay, so that's a summary of the research design discussing leadership styles and identified police misconduct and corruption as perceived by police officers over a variety of law enforcement departments. And in the very end, take away from it, okay, one person can change it. It is how you lead, your ethics, and your code of conduct that directly influences your subordinates or employees. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I will see you all in discussion, and I hope you all have a good week.